my dudes? Yeah, what's happening? Welcome. It is Wednesday. That's Art Day. This question came in from Kyle Lefelt, who says, "How often or in what company's life cycle makes them want to hire a junior artist? Is it a promise that they'll stay for a longer time, or is it because of salary cost? Maybe. Do junior artists get to do the illustrations that you see from the company? I'd like to hear more about your perspective on junior artists, and I think this is a great topic. First and foremost, if you get hired at a game studio, if you don't have any experience at all, you're either going to get hired as an associate or a junior level artist. They're basically kind of usually the same thing. Some companies make a distinction, and a lot of companies will have like associate 1, associate 2. Then you would get promoted to like a regular artist role. And then from there, you can work your way up to senior, and then senior 1, senior 2. And then sometimes if you don't go the leadership route, you will end up becoming a principal artist. And it's important for you to know that hierarchy because what is expected of each one of those is very distinctly different. And now, first of all, if you do get hired as a junior artist, congratulations, man, you're part of the team. Junior artists are an essential part of any game development project, especially as video games are now freaking huge, okay? I mean, I don't know if you played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but man, that is a team of, I think, Ubisoft has about 1,000 people on each team. Assassin's Creed game, that's a lot of people. And that means that a lot of people need to follow their production pipeline role. And that also means that it's going to lead to some frustration for many a junior artist because when we're on the outside and we're looking in, we're watching Rockstar, game developers, and we're seeing them do these beautiful paintings. And we imagine that they kind of get a lot of freedom. We can imagine that they get a lot to say in the development of a project. But if you're a junior artist, a lot of times what you're actually hired for as a junior artist is usually production stuff. It's going to be rocks, it's going to be trees, it's going to be mountains, it's going to be skins, it's going to be turnarounds. It's going to be a lot of laborious iteration, reworking designs and exploring ideas in rough sketch form until something gets approved. It's manpower, basically. So usually when a company hires a junior artist or junior art staff, it's because they need to create a ton of content because they have a lot of demand from their customers, and you've got a lot of artists that need to be making what is needed for the game to finish these massive worlds. So if you're a concept artist and you're a junior concept artist, you're going to be designing buildings, you're going to be designing props, you're going to be designing what they call culture kits. Now, you might end up doing this if you're a regular or a senior. In fact, I did that for many years, and that's probably my most significant contribution to the games that I've worked on is the prop design stuff. But I was managing a lot of junior artists. I was showing them how to create content that created a story within the world around it. You don't get to do as many of those beautiful Vista paintings or a lot of the promotional art that you see online. In fact, it's not necessarily glamorous, but it's an essential part of the game development process. In fact, if you want to get work as a game developer and break in as a junior artist, the best thing that you can have in your portfolio is a lot of rocks and trees and culture kits, prop design, chairs, benches, vending machines, planters, gumball machines, bar stools. What does a bar look like? Like breakdown of a bar. You got your glasses, you got your different brands of whiskey or whatever up, behind the bartender. Generally, again, concept artists, we look at these beautiful paintings and we think that's what we should be doing, but it's not always the case. A lot of times with junior artists, that's where you're going to be doing those breakdowns, those turnarounds. You're going to need to be doing things that modelers can build off of. And I talk a lot about this in my environment concept art workshops. I tune most of my concept art workshops towards the jobs that would get you into the game industry. So I have hired many junior level artists. In fact, I just hired a couple of junior level artists. And here's the things that I would say to them. Number one rule, the best thing you can do as a junior artist, be a freaking sponge. Do not come into this thinking that you know better than the people who've been making the games before you or what their bosses want from or should want from them. No. Your job as a junior artist is to absorb everything that you can. Ask lots of questions, but not too many. Because you don't want to pester, but you want to constantly show that you're really putting your best effort forward. You want to show that this is something you really want and you really want to develop and grow at. So that means taking a lot of extra time after work to take courses and take tutorials from other professionals. And your whole job as a junior artist is just to impress your boss enough to show that you no longer need to be in the training realm. You want to be a sponge and then retain the knowledge and information. If your boss gives you a paint over or gives you directions, do not ignore that. That is the worst thing you could possibly do, is to make your boss feel like you're wasting their time, because your whole role as a junior artist is to maximize your boss's time. Your whole role is to save the company money, to make them money. Otherwise, they find somebody else who will. This is a business, and that is what your role is. You have to think of yourself as an extension of your manager's skills. So if you were training under a master swordsmith, for instance, you would spend 10 or 20 years just trying to get into their mind to recreate what it is that they do so masterfully. And that means sometimes unlearning things that you thought you knew better, or things that somebody else taught you. Now, you can run those ideas by your manager, but ultimately as a junior artist, you're not going to get the say-so. You're not going to get the final word on things, and you're never going to impress them so much with brilliant ideas that there's going to shift the direction of the whole game. Don't start thinking that you can do that until you've earned it. And yes, I only bring that up because I've hired some people who told me that my clients did it wrong and they wanted to do it better. And then the client gets it and says, this isn't what we asked for. What are you doing? And that makes your manager look bad. Don't ever make your manager look bad like that. But respect and admiration and promotions and the big money and all the glamour and glory comes from proving yourself consistently over a long period of time. So don't come in expecting you're going to be directing the darn game or designing the main hero, unless, of course, if you're at a small studio. A lot of times they wear many, many hats. So junior artists will be expected to do everything. So this is mostly from the stance of like corporate game development, like the big studios and what junior artists do there. Don't expect that you're going to come in and be put on the hypest, character design or the new character design for this big hot game if you're a junior artist. Generally, like I've seen instances where in Japan, the first company I worked for was Capcom, and there was a concept artist who had designed some of the characters for a previous game. He would do his sort of fancy illustrations, and then he had a junior artist do turnarounds to break down his design into a buildable 3D model that the 3D modelers could build off of. And so that's a good example of what a junior artist would be doing. And a lot of times you have to think of yourself like you're an assistant. So again, be a sponge, soak up all the knowledge and information from those people who've shipped games, before you. Do not be difficult or hang out with the, quote, difficult crowd. I've had many instances in my career when I got wrapped up with hanging out with the group of guys who thought they knew better than the director. And believe me, man, if you attach yourself to a group like that around the campus or around the office, then all of the bad stuff that the leads put on them, they also put on you. And so when you're part of a group like that, the worst person in that group is going to be reflective of your behavior. So be careful of that. Don't get too tied into or wrapped up in sitting around for coffee complaining about the boss or complaining about the direction of the game. Many times, like I would say every game that I worked on had this small little group, this splinter cell within the company that was like that. And they just thought they knew better. So be extra careful with who you hang out with, who you spend a lot of time with, and the dialogue that you adopt about the production. It's always going to be challenging, but don't get lumped into the complainers. And by the way, I'm giving you this advice for your career success at that company, okay? I want you to ace it. I want you to get promoted. I want you to leave a lasting impression with your managers so that you're the person they take with them when they get promoted, and then you get a pay raise, ideally. Sometimes that works. The other thing that I'm going to recommend is that you always do what you say you're going to do. This is very important. I don't expect the artists that I hire to be perfect or to be, incredibly fast, churning out full paintings every day. But if they promise me that they're going to finish something by, 2:00 p.m. the next day, I expect them to follow through with that. I expect them to deliver on what they say they're going to do. No bailing. These are common problems that sometimes junior artists do. They hang out and play games, or they hang out and talk about games all day, and very little actual work gets done. And if your boss sees that they've got a senior artist who's doing 10 times the work as you, or even 2 times the work as you, because you're hanging out and chit-chatting all day. Well, that can end up really costing you, because you could end up being one of those people that they let go if they're looking to shave costs. Generally, junior artists aren't considered their rock stars because they haven't proven themselves yet. So this is your chance to really prove yourself, prove that you can be reliable, prove that you can make money for the company. Here's a big one. Do not overstep your role. Now, this is a big one because even senior artists will do this, and I've seen it many times. A lot of times, just being on a development team, you become passionate about the project and you start coming up with ideas that are well outside of what you're tasked with. Don't do this. You're not going to impress anybody. You're just going to step on other people's toes. And then they're going to have a lot of complaints about you because you're doing their job and they want to do their job. So a junior concept artist trying to come up with sketches for the next campaign or expansion to the game is not productive. You're going to look like a problem. This is depending on the studio, but this is like what I experienced in corporate game development. Conversely, an indie game studio might think that's amazing. Wow, this artist is already thinking about what's next. That would be great. That's more of the camp that I fall into, but I got into a lot of trouble as a junior artist. That's why I'm warning you, man. Don't make the mistakes I made. I could have been promoted a lot faster. As a junior artist, you want to approach it from the perspective that you're providing a service. And that service is to help them create lots of content for their game. So if you're given a task, do it the way that your manager tells you to do it, even if you would disagree with that, because the boss is always right. I mean, hey, I don't like this. You know, I've had bad bosses. I've had bosses that were way off and they were completely wrong. And sometimes that can really stifle your career. It can actually slow you down. And if you run into a situation where you have a boss that is just consistently setting you up for failure, I highly recommend that you try to find a different team within that company, or start planning sort of Shawshank Redemption style, start digging your tunnel to plan to find a job at a different studio, because an abusive boss or a destructive boss or a boss who sets you up to fail will stagnate your career and potentially end it, because they start building this identity about you. And they could say bad things. This is true for any role, by the way, not just juniors. This is true if you're an art director, damn it. If you got a boss who's setting you up for failure, that becomes a perpetuating machine. People can only see you within the confines of somebody who's a screw up. So get out from working under a boss that's setting you up for failure. I've seen artists who are totally struggling. They couldn't get an edge. They were failing on every review. And then they changed managers, and that new manager just loved them. Suddenly that artist is just getting promoted and they're getting accolades. They're getting just all kinds of positive reviews because they changed the manager they were working under, and they had to do it very carefully, because remember the earlier thing I was saying, don't criticize your manager. Don't do it. Even if they're a complete rotten piece of, anyway. That does lead me into communication. Communication is going to be one of the biggest challenges that you're going to face as a junior artist. Generally, junior artists are fairly young. And so what that means is a lot of times you're not aware yet of how to communicate problems and solutions in a fashion that's productive towards both you looking like you're really making a good effort and also putting your ego aside. As it's okay to say, hey, I don't know how to handle this particular task. I could use a little bit of help on this, especially as a junior artist. I would so much rather that a junior artist comes to me and says, I don't know why, but I just can't seem to nail this thing, the material rendering or the lighting on this or whatever the thing is. I would so much rather that a junior artist comes to me with that and says, I'm struggling with this, than to blow it off or disappear or try to do it totally wrong and it's nothing like what the client or the boss wants. I would so much rather that junior artist approach me and say, this is my struggle and how can I improve on this, or how can I make sure that this is a success? Because your boss's job, your manager's job, especially if you're a junior artist, your manager's job is to set you up for success. And so that means going to them with questions. Now, I do want to put in a caveat here and a bit of a warning. If you're doing that 5 times a day, well, then you're probably going to look like somebody who can't figure out things on their own. And if you ignore feedback and directions from your manager, you're also going to look pretty bad. But it's more important that you show that you're trying to figure out solutions than to constantly be boastful and then fail. That's a fall on your face situation. Don't set yourself up in that kind of a level of trap. As a junior artist, you can expect that you're going to get more hand holding than most people. And in fact, as you get promoted, you're sort of expected to provide support for the more junior staff. More things that junior artists can expect. You're probably going to be doing a lot of, again, props, probably skin designs. A lot of times games are a service now, so they need a lot of artists to create variant outfits or variant costume designs for existing heroes so they can just reskin them. Another thing that junior artists are going to end up doing a lot of is icons and user interface. Icon design is its own science because you're also dealing with psychology. It's like, how does the player think? Like when you get a description for clairvoyance, like how do you illustrate clairvoyance? These are tough challenges, but man, I spent many a nights, late nights at the office early in my career designing icons for difficult to describe abilities in tiny little paintings. And they can a lot of times just be like 128 by 128. Again, I have workshops where I go deep into how to design icons for games. The other things that you might end up doing as a junior artist, specifically for concept art, you're going to be doing a lot of armor designs and turnarounds. As a junior artist, man, you get to do so much. You get to learn so many things. And I would recommend that whatever it is, even if it feels a little bit monotonous and it feels a little bit unglamorous, I would recommend that you try to put your all into it because that's how you're going to find yourself getting promoted or how you're going to find yourself getting more opportunities to work in games, is to be a strong team player. And as people move on to other companies and projects finish up and as new people leave and there's always new seats, and that's how you're going to get promoted into higher roles and where you're going to end up finding whether or not you have leadership skill. And I don't want to dig into leadership or art directors or game directors in this video. I think that this is definitely a nuanced talk for people who want to break into the game industry, and you're generally not going to break into the game industry as a game director because that's a very different discipline. And to everybody out there, man, I wish you the best of luck. I will say that a lot of times junior artists, they're stubborn. And don't be that way, try to look at what other artists at that studio do, look at what the seniors at that art studio do, and try to emulate what they're doing. Because if you can emulate what they're doing at a cheaper cost, you've got a good chance you'll get hired. The biggest reason why companies hire artists is because they want to make money. This is a business, and they hire employees so that they can make more money and maximize their profits. So be an artist that can create content for the game that you're applying to, like the rocks and trees and the cottages and the fences and the signposts and all the roads and all that stuff that you see in games. They're massive worlds. Be somebody who can create concept art for those things. So I highly recommend that you pursue that in your portfolio to get your first job breaking into the game industry. The character design you're watching me do in this video is from the World of Twilight Monk Volume 2. You can currently pick up World of Twilight Monk Volume 1 if you like my artwork and you want to have a nice big fat 100-page collection of it. And that is available already on Amazon. And best of luck to all of you out there. Of course, if you want to check out some of my workshops, again, I have environment concept art workshops that teach you how to choose which breakdowns and how to choose camera angles and set up your models for lighting them. And also skin design workshops over there on my Gumroad channel. And dudes, I'm here every week with more art tips for you to break into the game industry or build a career as an artist. So don't forget to leave questions in the comments below. And until next week, I'll catch y'all mañana de bon and ciao, baby. Oh yeah. Dude, what the heck is Twilight Monk? Which is the first book to buy? I get this question a lot, so I wanted to clarify. If you don't know already, yes, I've worked on many successful video games, but now I'm making illustrated novels and art books. And the order that you should pick them up in if you're interested in the world of Twilight Monk is to start with the book called The World of Twilight Monk. This is an illustrated art book, but it features a lot of backstory on characters and locations and populations and the different cities and what they do with those cities. And this is the groundwork for all these adventures that I'm about to tell in the illustrated novels. Now, which illustrated novel should you start with if you want to pick up the Twilight Monk series and start reading about these characters? I highly recommend you start with the Secrets of Kung Fulio. The Secrets of Kung Fulio has 70 illustrations by myself and Danny Kong. It's a 50,000 word book that was written by myself and Chris Krubik. It has a lot of Kung Fu fantasy adventure action. It is the story of a reluctant teenage hero who has to overcome this bully who's trying to kick him out of town, basically. But he kind of totally stinks at Kung Fu, so he's going to need to build some alliances, and he's going to need a shortcut to ultra secret Kung Fulio mastery. It's got comedy, it's got action, it's a buddy story too, so lots of heart. Just read the reviews, man. People are loving this book. And yes, the illustrated novel series is a series, in fact. So you can look forward to The Return of the Ancients, which is coming out in illustrated form later this year. You can pick up The World of Twilight Monk and Secrets of Kung Fulio, as well as many of the other comic books and illustrated novels that I've written and drawn over at aquaticmoon.com. All orders are delivered and fulfilled by Amazon, so you can read reviews and get that prime shipping, baby. I can't wait to share these Kung Fu adventure stories with you, and I hope you'll come along for the ride. I'd love to read your reviews as well. So dudes, that's it for me on this one. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.